Howdy folks, this is Justro at Metcalf Mills bringing you Fun Fact Friday, because this day and time facts are hard to come by. I got a good one for you today. It's about grain. I hope you enjoy it. On today's Fun Fact Friday, like I said, it's going to be about grains. Now you know a grain, if you think about it, it's really special. This little old grain that's dried out, it has life inside of it. And in the right conditions, that life comes out. Well, you put this thing in the ground, it gets moisture, warmth, and it starts to grow. Well, what about if you use that grain to eat? What then? Well, I was talking to a lady down in Texas this past week, and she shared with me her story, and I hope that I can maybe share that with you sometime, or maybe she can share that with you sometime. And she made me think a lot about the grain and do some research, and she shared with me some of her research, and it's more amazing. Me in the grain milling business, I still didn't realize to the full extent of how precious a grain is. Well, we've been told, well, that grain's not good for you. You need to quit eating grain. And people have developed allergies to, they say, gluten. Well, I've talked to several people, and a lot of people that know about this kind of thing share the same opinion. If grain is sprayed with we'll say a poison before harvest, to make it easier to harvest because it's dead, it's deteriorating, going downhill, it's dead, instead of letting it die and dry out on its own. So we spray it with poison, and a grain has crevices that things can get into. You can't help but some of that poison get into that. There's no way to stop it from it. You can wash it, but I don't believe you'll ever get it out once you put it on it. So then it goes to be processed and made into things for us to eat. Well, so that poison's still in there. Let's just back up a little bit and just talk about the commercial milling process for white flour. So they don't use stones. Most people, I won't say they, I'll say most people don't use stones to mill their grain. A lot of these big commercial operations, they use roller mills. And what that does, it's steel rollers with grooves on them, and as it progresses through different sets of rollers, the grooves go finer and finer. And one roller is turning slower than the other, so it kind of strips the grain as it goes through there. And the point of that is they want to get rid of all the germ, all the other parts of the grain except the endosperm, which is the main middle part of the grain. And that's what they make white flour out of. So they separate that out, and they thought that was a big breakthrough in milling when they discovered how to do that. You separate this white flour endosperm out, and you put the bran and all this other stuff in a different place, and you're eating just that endosperm. Well, that's not good for you. These grains are a compact package. Everything is there, and you need to eat it whole. So now to go back to, we eat bread out of the store, which I can't even consider bread anymore. And we're eating these poisons. So you eat this grain part, your body recognizes what you're eating when it gets in your gut. Your body recognizes what you're eating. That poison in that starts to hurt you. So your body thinks this grain is what is hurting me here. It's not the grain that's hurting you, it's a poison in that. And I know there may be some cases when people, they do have an allergy to something. but it's something natural. I don't know. It's hard to tie that together with being allergic. I mean, I know it's possible. I'm not belittling anybody. I'm just saying there's a good chance that it's not the food that you're allergic to, but it's what's in that. Okay, so we start talking about grain. A grain is a capsule, and everything's contained. It's sealed up. That's why when a grain dies at the time of the year it's supposed to die, and it dries out and it lays somewhere until the next year, it holds that life inside of it so that the next spring in the right conditions, it can bust open and grow. The life can come out and grow and produce more grain. So when you mill grain, especially on a stone mill, when you mill grain on a stone mill, the way that stone works is that stone does not crush or tear that grain up, it shears it. Because when I dress a millstone, I can run my hands over it and it feels like a brar, like burrs. They call them burrs. That's a kind of stone, but they call them burrs. And it feels just like a burr. It's real catchy and real sharp. So that shears the grain. It shears it like a million little pairs of scissors, just snip, 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 shearing this grain. And it shears everything up together, except sometimes the bran or the skin will not get sheared because it can flatten out enough and it's flexible and it just won't get sheared. So once you crack that grain open, within 24 hours, that grain has lost 40% of the vitamin content in it. And it just gets worse and worse. In 2 to 3 days, you've lost 85 to 90%. 2 or 3 days after the first day. So once you open that grain, like this lady conveyed to me, it's kind of like an apple. When you cut an apple open, it starts turning brown. Well, when you open that grain, it's the same thing, except a grain in an apple has a way different lifespan once it's harvested, but it's the same thing. That apple lay there maybe 2 weeks without deteriorating much, but once you cut that apple, you got very little time to use it unless you put it in salt water or some kind of preservative to keep it from turning brown. But it's going to turn brown and start decomposing once it gets air to it. And the reason for that, when the air meets with these vitamins and what's contained in that, it causes it to deteriorate. So 24 hours, you've lost 40% of your vitamin content. After that, another 2 to 3 days, you've lost 85 to 90%. How long do you guess flour and all these different products that were milled have, how much goodness do you think are left in those? So in your grocery store, the commercially produced products, not small batch people, the commercially produced products, you don't know how long they've been sitting. Now, a lot of the people I work with my business, they're small batch millers. They mill in small batches, they seal it up, and they get the grain to the store so somebody can use it ASAP. And you can tell when you eat that, you can tell the flavors, and it's totally different than some of this commercially, these big commercial operations, what they produce and how long it sits around and waits. So when you go to the grocery store and you buy a bag of commercially produced white flour, you have no idea how long that's been in that bag, where it was before that, how old it is. You don't know. And like I've explained, that product is going to be poor in nutritional value. It's going to be poor at best. Not only that, it may or may not have poison in it. Nobody wants to eat poison. With the exception, I know a few small batch millers, they don't mill small grains. They're more on the corn line. And you can tell the difference when you buy a bag of a small batch, locally produced product, because obviously everybody can't have a mill in their house and grind their grain fresh every day or two. So you got small batch people that's trying to cover that and providing as fresh as possible milled products for people. And like I say, a lot of that's corn products. So your best bet, if you can't fresh mill something yourself, is to go small batch with it. Hey dogs. Hey dogs. Penny, calm down. Calm down. So like I said, the best option if you can't mill your own grain is to go small batch. Find some local producer that's milling small batch products and go that route. So like I was saying before I started talking about that, when you crack a grain open, it starts losing its value. There's fats. Go on now, I can't talk about this and you bothering me. I can't talk about this and you bothering me. Go on. So when you crack that grain open, there's fats. I think they're unsaturated fats that are good for you. And when you crack that open, the fats in the germ, it's kind of an oily fat. They start ruining. They start going rancid after you crack that open and expose them to the air. So that's why that happens. Not only that, but you've got B vitamins that once they're exposed to light and air, they start going downhill. It starts degrading them, and you got vitamin A, which diminishes significantly after you crack that grain open and it's exposed to air. You've got vitamin E, which helps protect that grain, that also starts going way down in value after it's exposed to the air and the light. If you're eating a whole grain, and this lady in Texas reminded me of this, it has so many health benefits. It's good for your digestion, all kinds of different benefits to eating fresh milled whole grains. If you don't get it fresh milled, you're missing out on the biggest part of it. So that's why it's important to fresh mill that. So there's bunches of health benefits to eating fresh milled grain. It's not necessarily all these bad stories you've heard about gluten and all this kind of thing. Check it out. Read it up for yourself. Don't take my word for it. And one day I hope that I can work it out and share this lady's story of how it helped her and her family when she started milling her own grain. Also, to go along with this, I've got a little announcement. I've got the live set up, and I'll make an announcement about that in just a few minutes. But my announcement is, it's been in my brain for over 10 years. I want to build a mill. My design of a grain mill. And my thing is this: if you go to buy a grain mill today, it's going to cost you a lot of money if you get a quality grain mill. Now, you can get these little countertop models, and I'm not knocking those, but the most of them, some use natural stone, some don't. Some use synthetics, some use steel burrs. Like I said, nothing shears that grain like stone milling. So, you don't have very many choices. And I've thought a lot about that over the years, and I've played with it and thought about it, about when I build a mill, the design of it, how it's going to work, how it's going to function, things that I can do that's not offered right now currently. And I've come up with what I think is a very good design of a grain mill. And the best part is, it's not going to be so expensive that it's out of the reach of the people, because if y'all know me, you know how much I love milling. I've told you stories. It's in me. I just love milling. It's in my blood. And what I like better than milling is handing somebody a bag of milled product and them saying that's some of the best whatever that I've ever had. That means a lot to me. And what would mean even more to me is if I could produce a grain meal that is going to help people to be able to eat grain again and mill their own grain fresh. That's just something to me. Like I said, I've been planning it for, not planning it, but I've been thinking through it and kind of designing in my head for well over 10 years, this idea I've had. And I feel like now's the time to try to do something with it. Starting right after I get the work caught up with these old meals, these restorations and stuff that I've got going on now for people that's waiting on those. But after that, that's what I want to get into, is producing some grain meals that people can afford to buy. They can afford to have at their house, community use for a community of people to be able to invest in a meal, and that everybody gets fresh meal products. That's what I want to do. I feel it more and more every day. So that's my plan, and it was suggested to me by some dear friends to consider, and I have considered it, and I didn't really, I guess you could just say it's not my way, but I had to realize, like I was saying on my video the other day, to let people help you, to not let people help you is a form of selfishness. Now that don't directly apply to what I'm about to say, but my thing is I want to get grain mills out in communities. I want to bring them back. There used to be a grain mill in every community. It's not like I'm doing it just for money. If I can make a living, that'd be wonderful. But most of all, what's most important to me is I want to get grain mills out in communities so people can have this stuff to eat that's going to hopefully help them. So what I was saying is, it was suggested to me, and I thought a lot about it over the last few months and try to weigh out, well, this and that. And you just kind of have to put your pride aside. And what I want to do is this. I've got together a Kickstarter and launched it. And what that is there's been some feelers out, and there's a lot of people that think this is a great idea, and people that want to help with it, and people that have helped with it already. A lot of good feedback and positivity, and I feel like it needs to move forward. I've started a Kickstarter to kick this thing off and get these grain mills into production way sooner rather than way later if I do it all on my own. And I know it'll help people. I think it'll be a blessing. There's been a lot of prayers around this, and people that I trust and feel really good about how they feel about things and how they get to a conclusion. They think this is a great idea. I do too. I love it. I want to do it. I want to help. I'm putting the link to this Kickstarter down in the not the comments, down in the description of this video. Right under the video, there'll be a description you can click on and open it up and see that. That's where that link will be for this Kickstarter. There's a little video there that I'll share right here on my channel in the next day or so. But that's what I'm doing. That's one of my announcements. And if you can help, great. If you can't, that's fine. Pray for this thing. Keep it in your prayers. I want it to help people. That's my goal. Here are some of the various grains you can mill with one of these mills. And this Kickstarter, 100% of the proceeds will go towards producing grain mills for communities. And if you've watched my channel any length of time, you got a little insight into how my life's been the last couple years, almost couple years. I've had a lot of responsibility around caring for my parents and always taking care of my daughters, and I just pretty much had to stop work for the last I mean, I've done a little bit of work, but it was very, very little. But I pretty much had to stop work in my shop or site work on site for a while. And that has furthered to slow down this dream and what I want to do. I hope you've enjoyed this little grain talk. I sure did. Glad I could share it with you. I'm excited about this. I appreciate all the new subscribers. I hope you get a blessing from this channel. Another announcement. I got everything figured out to go live. I had to jump through some hoops that I didn't even know was there. Got that done. We're set up to go live. I'm planning on going live Sunday evening at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Last time I didn't think about time zones. But yeah, it's 7 o'clock Eastern time Sunday evening. Me, my daughters will be going live. And I'm really looking forward to it. I've been wanting to do it for a while. We tried a couple of weeks ago. Couldn't get it to work right because things wasn't in order like they was supposed to be. I didn't know what I had to do really. And we've got it now. It's good. Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. This is Justro at Metcalf Mills. I look forward to seeing you next time, and I look forward to seeing you then.